Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's really great to see you. This is a reading for Twin Flame Divine Feminines, or if you don't resonate with that label, it could be for you if you're looking to work with or balance feminine energies within yourself. This reading has been a really long time coming. I think the last Divine Feminine reading I did was 2 months ago. So thank you so much for being patient with me as I sort of shift around my schedule. I was just guided to sort of take a break from Twin Flame readings, just because if you look at my playlists, it was too much heavily shifted towards Twin Flame energy, and I wanted to sort of rebalance that a little bit more. So that's the reason why I did it. And also because I felt like because I was doing Twin Flame readings so often, there wasn't enough time in between readings for the energy to shift, if that makes sense. So because it's been 2 months since I've done a Divine Feminine reading, it's like there's much more to talk about. It's kind of how it's feeling today. And also because of that, because I haven't done a Divine Feminine reading in such a long time, I feel like there's so much now to talk about. There's so much in this reading that's just wanting to come through, and so I'm very excited to be doing this reading today. There's a lot that's wanting to be talked about and all that, but I'm gonna start for the overall context of this reading for you, Divine Feminine. I feel like it's wanting to bring up this story of something that I did yesterday that is serving as sort of the overall context of your reading. So I have this really beautiful house plant. It just sits right behind my camera. And for years it has had this sort of infestation, or I guess it was a bug of some sort that was living on its stems and on the bottom part of the leaves. And for years I ignored it because I was like, oh, that's not a bug, right? I don't see any actual bugs on the plant, so it's fine. It doesn't look great, but whatever, the plant's still alive. Until finally my sister came over and she looked at the plant. She's like, those are definitely bugs. So yesterday I finally took care of it. I got some sort of bug killer, and I brought the plant outside. I repotted it, changed the soil, and then sprayed every single leaf, all the stems, all of that. And the bug itself wasn't actually there. It was just sort of the shells or the remnants. I think the bug actually died out as well on its own, but there was still evidence of it. And so I just took the soap and some water and just cleaned all of the debris off of the plant, right? And because this plant was extremely hardy, extremely resilient, it's like a whole new plant. The way that first of all the debris came off really easily. I had no trouble in sort of getting all of the dead bug energy, whatever that was, off of the plant. And now I just can't stop looking at it. It's just it's a completely new plant is what it's feeling like. So I feel like that's sort of the metaphor, the context of your reading, which is just talking about any sort of energies that are no longer serving you, right? It doesn't even feel like those are active energies. It's just kind of there's a energetic debris or leftover, or I don't know, so an empty shell kind of energy around, but that's being cleared out now. And perhaps you're doing that actively, or it could just be sort of this retrograde, and also the full moon in Scorpio. I feel like that has a lot to do with it, a lot of death, rebirth cycles, right? But it feels very much focused on sort of the rebirth energy, which is so lovely. It just feels so good. And it's just this plant looks so incredibly beautiful now. Anyways, okay. And so we have here the High Priestess. So this is the overall context of the reading. I feel like this is your energy, Divine Feminine. The High Priestess to me always talks about one who is able to work with the moon's energy, right? So the moon's energy can be very difficult if you're not sort of aware of it, is kind of how it's coming through. And then you also have these two page energies, the Page of Swords and the Page of Wands. So it could be, there's been so much page energy just hanging around recently. So this Page of Swords I always see is someone who is watching from a distance. And that could be so much. It could just be something like you are drawing attention, especially with the Page of Wands. These two could actually also be representing children as well. So if you have children, or if it's not children, it's like people or individuals who are learning new things, right? And especially in terms of like swords or wands. It could also be people who are feeling like they don't know enough. So that's sort of how I'm seeing it, that there's energies around you because you are in this High Priestess energy of like those who are perhaps seeking guidance, or like people who are around you, perhaps children, but it doesn't have to be, that are looking to you because there's uncertainty, or there's like a period of a lot is shifting, is kind of how it's coming through. And so they're looking to you as sort of one who can work with these changing tides, is kind of how it's coming through. And then you also have here the Ace of Cups, the Magician, and the King of Wands. So it kind of feels like this is kind of like, this I often see whenever energies come out as being pages. I see this as being sort of timidness, right? Like, or like a shyness, or perhaps like a reluctance to approach, especially with this Page of Swords. I see that as sort of like waiting to gather all of the information or whatever it is in order to make some sort of more conscious approach, perhaps by these ones, whoever they are. So it could be your counterpart, but it doesn't have to be. It could be just other energies in general, especially if you are in a more feminine energy. There are, just by nature of the law of attraction, masculine energies that are attracted to you. Is kind of how that's coming through. And also the opposite is true as well, right? So it could be that. So that's the overall context of the reading. We're going to get into the actual reading part. I'm using this new deck called the Cantagi. I don't know how to pronounce it. Oracle. Link is in the description box below. But anyway, so we're starting off here with Guided by Polaris, the North Star, which is really interesting because in the guidebook, the guidebook is so informative for this one. It has so much story in it, which is really lovely, but it was coming through really interestingly because I feel like the North Star energy that we often hear in sort of readings and things like that talks about like what you're going towards, right? Like your goal, it's leading you. It's like you're going towards the North Star, right? But what was interesting about this, what came through in this story, is that we're not always going towards the North Star, right? We're not always trying to go north. And north in sort of this deck here represents like an expansion, right? So we're not always expanding. Sometimes we need to sort of go back, or sometimes we need to like go inward or go in different directions. But the North Star is there to guide us as a navigation tool because it shows us where north is, right? So, but the card that's coming out here is west. So it's like you're going west, but you can still use the North Star to guide you. If that's north, then you know which direction west is, right? So it's coming through here as being sort of like this is the navigation tool, right? The thing that shows us the directions, but what you were going towards actually is this completion energy, right? Like finishing out a cycle perhaps, which is really interesting. Because I feel like this North Star energy is kind of representing it could be representing sort of like the twin flame energy in general. So it could be like the connection. I feel like this last bit of energy that's been going on has been like using the twin flame energy or the connection, let's say, as sort of the North Star, right? The thing that navigates us, but moving to, or like trying to complete a cycle that perhaps is not related to this directly, if that makes sense. It's like this is the navigation tool. This is the thing that we were working towards, like our goal, right? Like the more immediate sort of direction or thing that we're trying to accomplish, perhaps, which is a really interesting energy. So I feel like what that has to do, and also you have here, also with the numbers here, you have 4 and 7, and then the next card here is 47. So 47, like 4 and 7 adds to 11. So that to me is a very sort of like alignment kind of energy. Like you're in alignment. And it's also bringing in this energy of like stability. And with the 7, that sort of talks to me about like divinity or magic, that kind of thing. So like creating stability perhaps. And this one says in the tunnels of our ancestors, which is really interesting because it's also bringing in this energy of like generational patterns, good or bad, right? There's always both. That there, perhaps what the cycle that you're just completing has to do with, first of all, perhaps healing generational trauma or healing generational patterns that were perhaps negative or perpetuated pain within generations, but also respecting and honoring and appreciating the very positive, structure-giving kind of generational patterns that we've inherited from our ancestors. Because there's all of that within here. And what's so interesting, though, is that because this is sort of like the stars energy, right? The astral, if you want to call it that. And then the tunnels of our ancestors talks to me about a very grounded energy, something that's very much focused on our physical environment. So it's kind of like using the astral or using this like this connection, the twin flame energy, if you want to call it that, in order to heal or complete some sort of like ancestral patterning of some sort. So this could be, I really don't like using the word karmic in these types of reading because there's so much that people bring into that energy of karmic, right? Like calling people karmic partners or whatever. But karma to me just represents sort of like patterns, right? Patterns and balancing and justice and all of that. That's what is included in here. So it's kind of like a balancing of the astral and or the spiritual or whatever you want to call this energy and the physical or the earthbound or the earthly the like physical matrix kind of energy. It's a balance of both of those, which is really interesting. Okay, and then the next couple cards out here that you have are the Fury Bushfires and the 9 of Wands. So this Fury Bushfires, it's not an easy energy, but it is because it's coming out with this energy here, the tunnels of our ancestors. It's talking to me today about pain, right? Like pain and perhaps trauma or like traumatic energy that has been carried down through generations perhaps, or like if not from like your ancestors or your family or whatever, it could just be like your own experiences from your past, right? Trauma from your past, whatever that means to you, very generally or very specifically. And especially because it's coming out with the 9 of Wands, I see this as sort of a lot of battles that have been fought. It's kind of how I read this card. So I feel like there's been some sort of significant completion energy of like finishing off a really major cycle in terms of past battles, whatever that is for you. And what I love here, because this is not an active energy, right? It's not. This is sort of representing like the dead bugs on my plant. That it's like it's not active. They're not still there, but they're still perhaps energetic debris or residue is kind of how it's coming through, that was from this energy that hasn't been cleared out yet. Because the next card you have here is this transformation pressure, right? Which is kind of like, whenever I see this card, it kind of looks to me like being like almost like in a car wash, right? Like moving through a car wash, and all of this like debris or whatever it is being removed as you move through this sort of tunnel, is kind of how I see this. And then there's kind of like this refreshing energy that comes in afterwards, right? That's sort of how I see this card, and that's the energy that's coming through. It's like moving through, again, this with the tunnel here, right? Moving through a tunnel, perhaps like, especially because it's coming in with roots. So that brings in all of like the root chakra energy, which talks about family and belonging and safety and stability, all of that. So moving through some sort of tunnel, and through that process, it's clearing out any energies that are no longer serving, or that are dead and gone, but are somehow still present, right? It's like it's coming through very much with like a spring cleaning kind of energy, where you're just like going through perhaps old memories, even maybe, right? Like old memories, and then just like discarding the things that are no longer serving you. I don't know if this is a very, I feel like this is something that like people who have anxiety, or even like any type of anxiety really, but specifically comes through to me is like social anxiety, of like replaying past events, of like, how could I have been less awkward in that situation, or how could I have made that situation better, or something like that. And it's like, none of that energy serves you. Just let it go. Like put your mind through some sort of like mental car wash, and just let it go. It's not serving you. Anyways, what you have next is so beautiful. This card here, the Juniper Caduceus, which is a really interesting energy, because whenever I see Caduceus, that brings in the energy of Mercury. So again, more of that Mercury retrograde energy. We are almost at the end of it. I think it's like next week or something. It shifts back finally, which I'm very happy about. But what this Juniper energy is talking about is, it was talking about this really lovely story of like a songbird that, using their song, was able to weave like all of these separate entities into one, is kind of how it's coming through. And this juniper is coming through as like the home tree. I don't know what that means to you, but it's just coming in as like a symbol of like, kind of like, there is this childhood game that I used to play called Cops and Robbers, where you would like run around in like the playground. There half of the people were cops, half were robbers, and obviously it was kind of like a game of tag, but the robbers had a home tree, right? The place where they could go to rest, where they couldn't get sort of tagged, is what this is talking about. So anyways, I don't know why it's coming through like that, but it's kind of coming through as like a place of rest, right? But in this place of rest, it's a place that is like a coming together energy, right? Like a place where the two snakes sort of wrap around one another, which is really lovely, because it's kind of like an energy of fulfillment, but also an energy of union is what's coming through with this card. It's so lovely. I love this card so much, because obviously in sort of I feel like what's talking about with the energy of the Cops and Robbers game is that you can't always stay at the home tree, right? Like the whole point of the game is for people to be running around or moving, but of course there are periods necessary of resting and recovering and like reviving your strength. So I feel like that's kind of the energy that's coming through here, is that I feel like there was a really sort of perhaps intense period of like running around dealing with whatever this is, right? Like whatever this energy is for you, that you were having to perhaps like complete or finish off that cycle, but then it's like this once you're done that, once that energy moves through and all of this sort of the car wash is finished, going back to the home tree to rest and find like this union energy is what this is coming through. It's so lovely. And then you have these two cards coming out underneath that, the speaking your word voice, and then the home earth, which is, it's I love when the cards come out like this, because it's just like, it's all telling this one story, right? Because this was bringing up sort of the songbird energy of using song in order to unify or to bring together or to like amplify an experience, is kind of how that's coming through. And then the home earth is all of this energy of nurturing and resting and waiting. So I'm also seeing this as being more of the masculine energy, right? The I'm just going to leave it like that. This I'm seeing as being the masculine energy. So whether that represents your counterpart or something else, it's like there's an energy here of like the masculine energy expressing perhaps, and then the one who's sitting at the home tree is how this is feeling, which is so lovely, because it's like, it is feeling like coming together, but I feel like perhaps if you're in this feminine energy here, perhaps just like, because I see this as being a very patient energy, but one that's not necessarily focused on this, right? It's not, it's a very receptive, but also inner, like inward looking, if that makes sense. It's not this energy here. So this may be you, divine feminine, where it's like you're not necessarily focused on the external energies or your counterpart, perhaps. You're not focused on the external energies in order to find this home tree kind of like resting, peaceful state, if that makes sense. It's really lovely. It's so nurturing. It's so fresh is kind of how it's feeling. Like it's just feeling like spring today. It's really lovely. It is feeling like spring. That's just how the whole reading feels. Okay, so I pulled tons of tarot cards, but they're all just kind of emphasizing everything that I just said. So again, here you have the Two of Cups, right? And then the Eight of Pentacles and the Sun. So how I'm seeing this Two of Cups is the energy of the twin flame connection, but with the Eight of Pentacles following it, it's kind of this energy of like you are aware of the North Star there. The North Star is always there, right? Your guiding light, or the thing that you navigate by, is always present, but what you are working on is whatever this completion west energy is, right? What you were working on was not north. It wasn't an expansion, perhaps. It was focusing on some sort of completing the cycle that was perhaps adjacent to the actual connection itself. So obviously it's related. It's connected in some way, but it's not the direct focus, if that makes sense. And the Sun energy here. So these two are very masculine energy. So it could be that because this is a divine feminine energy, perhaps you were focused on more of a masculine expression in your life, right? Like working on your sun energy, whatever that means. But then after that, what I love so much is like once that cycle is complete, or there's been some sort of completion, or the work has finished in some way, or the work is never finished though, right? It's just talking about like you've reached some sort of completion stage in order to start again. But then you have these lovely cards here, the Four of Swords and the Ten of Cups. So this Four of Swords is talking to me about like the home tree, like resting at the home tree and filling yourself up again with all of this sort of Ten of Cups emotional fulfillment energy, which is so beautiful. And then here you have here the Six of Cups, the Page of Pentacles, and the Ace of Pentacles. I feel like this is sort of like the Page of Pentacles in this deck. Whenever I see this one, I always see this as being like biding your time, or like spending your time doing the things that you love, or like spending a lot of time doing hobbies, for example, right? Like really grounding, really nurturing, experiences or things that you're occupying yourself with, while perhaps waiting for this Six of Cups energy to come through, which is obviously talking about, like, Six of Cups to me represents soulmate energy just in general. So it doesn't have to be your counterpart. It could just be soulmates in general, or like your soul family in general, because this is a card to represent to me all types of soulmates, not just romantic ones. But it's like kind of waiting at the home tree for your soulmates to come through is kind of how that's coming in, because your energy feels like this, right? It's like, I feel like not that you are the home tree, right? It's like, I feel like the home tree is kind of representing more so like I don't know. I don't know. I have no words to describe what that is, but it's like you are here waiting at the home tree is what that's feeling like. And the others, once they're done sort of working on what it is that they're working on, they will come to find rest here, is kind of how it's feeling. There's energies here around you. So it could be the divine masculine, but it could also be others who are navigating around the home tree, but perhaps are still busy working on completing cycles or things like that are needing to be done. And then once those things are done, it will be a return to the home tree is kind of how that's coming through. But then you have here the Moon and the Two of Wands, because I feel like this energy has been hanging around for a while, but because the Moon is coming out, it comes through this energy of like you not being able to necessarily see the next steps or like see very far off into the distance, right? It's like you can only see what's immediately in front of you. What needs to happen next is kind of how this energy is coming through. And especially with the Two of Wands, it's like in order to make it to the home tree or make it home or whatever it is, it's like it requires a bit of planning or strategizing with the Two of Wands. Because if we're talking about that cops and robbers game, it's kind of like, you know where the home tree is, but in order to get there, you would have to run like through all of the potential whatever dangers in quotation marks. There's no danger like that, but it's kind of just like having to chart your course or like having to plan ahead of like which direction you're going to go in. Of course, there's you can never really plan for everything, but it's like at least making the appropriate actions or strategizing or preparing in order to make that journey is kind of how it's feeling. I hope that makes sense. But I feel like for your energy, Divine Feminine, it feels incredibly peaceful and like springtime. I'm just going to leave it like that. So I'm going to go to the extended of what else you may need to know about this situation. If you're interested in that, you can find the link in the description box below. You'll also find the link for my website if you're interested in a personal reading. If this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment down below. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.